Jenna's family had just moved into an old house on the outskirts of town, a place with creaky floors and draughty hallways that seemed to whisper when no one was around. The house had a history, one that the locals spoke of in hushed tones. It was said to be haunted, but Jenna's parents dismissed it as mere superstition. They were excited about the new beginning, but Jenna couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that enveloped her every time she walked through the dimly lit corridors. Exploring the house one afternoon, Jenna found a door leading up to the attic, a dark, dusty room filled with forgotten belongings from past residents. The air was thick with dust, and cobwebs hung from the rafters like ghostly drapes. Old trunks and boxes were scattered around, filled with items that seemed to belong to another era. Jenna felt a strange pull towards the attic, as if it was calling out to her. As she stepped inside, her eyes were drawn to an old mirror in the corner. It was large and imposing, with a surface that had dulled over time. The mirror seemed out of place among the other forgotten items, almost as if it had a presence of its own. The frame was made of dark, twisted wood, carved with patterns that looked like eyes. The intricate designs seemed to follow her every move, making her feel as though she was being watched. The craftsmanship was exquisite, yet unsettling, as if the mirror held secrets of its own. She felt an odd chill, but curiosity got the best of her. Jenna had always been a curious child, and the mystery of the mirror was too intriguing to ignore. She took a deep breath and stepped closer, her heart pounding in her chest. She approached the mirror, wiping away the dust to get a better look. The surface cleared, revealing her reflection. But something was off. The more she wiped, the clearer the image became, and the more uneasy she felt. As Jenna stared at her reflection, she noticed something strange. Her reflection seemed to have a life of its own, moving independently of her actions. It was subtle at first, but soon became unmistakable. Her reflection wasn't copying her movements. She tilted her head to the left, but the reflection remained still, staring back at her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. She raised her hand, but her reflection kept its arms down, staring back at her with an eerie grin that Jenna wasn't making. The grin was wide and unnatural, stretching across the reflection's face in a way that seemed impossible. The grin widened, showing too many teeth, teeth that were sharp and menacing, unlike anything Jenna had ever seen. It was as if the reflection was mocking her, enjoying her fear. She froze, feeling an unnatural chill creep down her spine. Her breath caught in her throat, and she felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. The room seemed to grow darker, and the air became heavy with a sense of dread. Then, in a voice that didn't belong to her, the reflection whispered, "Don't look away." The voice was soft, yet commanding, echoing in the silent attic. It was a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the mirror itself. Jenna blinked, heart pounding, and backed away from the mirror. Her eyes locked on her reflection. She felt a surge of panic, her instinct screaming at her to run, but her legs felt like lead. She wanted to scream, but no sound would come out. Her throat was dry, and her voice seemed to have abandoned her. The reflection's grin grew wider, as if it was feeding off her fear. Slowly, her reflection raised its own hand, placing it against the glass as if trying to push through. The hand was pale and ghostly, with fingers that seemed to elongate as they pressed against the surface. Panicked, Jenna turned and ran out of the attic, slamming the door behind her. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, and her breaths came in short, ragged gasps. She didn't stop running until she was safely in her room, the attic door a distant memory. She didn't dare go back up, but that night she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Every shadow seemed to move, and every creak of the house made her jump. She felt a presence, something dark and malevolent, lurking just out of sight. As she lay in bed, the house was silent, too silent. The usual nighttime sounds were absent, replaced by an oppressive stillness that made her skin crawl. She pulled the covers up to her chin, her eyes darting around the room. She closed her eyes, trying to forget the mirror, but the image of the eerie grin and the whispered words haunted her thoughts. She tossed and turned, unable to find any comfort in the darkness, but as soon as she drifted into sleep, a soft, scratchy whisper echoed from the direction of the attic. It was faint but unmistakable, sending a shiver down her spine. The words were the same, chilling her to the bone. "Don't look away, Jenna. I'm almost here." The voice was closer now, more insistent. It felt as though the mirror's reflection was creeping closer, inching its way into her reality. The next morning, her parents found the attic door wide open, and in front of the mirror lay a single footprint. But it wasn't Jenna's. The footprint was larger, with an odd shape that didn't match any shoe Jenna owned. It was as if something had stepped out of the mirror and into their world, leaving behind a chilling reminder of its presence.